Canadian firms are planning to do more business with Europe because of uncertainty over whether the NAFTA trade rules will survive. It's according to a new report that says 23% of firms surveyed by the Export Development Canada said NAFTA was having a negative impact. And a quarter of those impacted said they were considering moving to the United States. Others could drift away. 23 said they were trying to diversify their markets, pivoting attention to the EU, where, of course, there is a new trade agreement. Peter Hall is the chief economist at the Export Development Canada and is in Ottawa for us tonight. We've known now for some months that the risk of NAFTA collapsing was a theoretical one, but these numbers suggest it's becoming real and businesses are starting to make contingency plans.
Well, we were back in May confronted with a business community, an exporting community in Canada that was already having pressure put on it by U.S. buyers to actually locate in the United States then. So at that time, I was doing a cross-Canada tour. I do that every May. And Canadian exporters were coming up to me saying, look, my buyer is actually talking to me and is saying, you really need to co-locate down here. We're worried about the risks that we face. Right. So they were saying, what should I do? This is real. So,
I mean, the problem is, in many of the cases, I mean, co-locating sounds like a nice idea, but if your factory is north of the border and the goods have to go backwards and forwards, let's take automobiles, for example, it's not the sort of thing you can just ginny up in a couple of months or so. It's going to be very difficult for some, particularly agricultural and obviously heavy manufacturing, to just have token presence in the United States for the purpose of a post-NAFTA.
Well, absolutely, and U.S. buyers actually understand that completely. You know, our information was anecdotal. I wouldn't say it was across the board, because when the poison pill clauses were put in round 4 of the NAFTA negotiations, of course, what happened then? Well, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce got very active in Washington, D.C., lobbying for NAFTA. The auto lobby, which is a very tightly insinuated supply chain on either side of the border, got very active. The retail sector, which would be responsible for passing on the higher cost of goods that have to cross a border to the average American, did not want that role, and so they got active in support of NAFTA too. So it's not just costs for Canadian businesses, it's actually costs for Americans and American businesses too.
I mean, how damaging will it be for Canadian exporters if NAFTA, if the US does pull the rug on NAFTA?
Well, at the limit, we've done a study that has said, look, if it took us back to pre-US-Canada Free Trade Agreement days, it could tip us into recession based on last year's numbers. So this is something that would be quite damaging. That would all be borne by the trade sector. So, of course, if it was a recession in GDP terms, it would be definitely a recession in export terms. However, there are other ways of getting around that. If we reverted back to most favored nation trading status and had to pay higher tariffs, you know, we essentially wouldn't be under the gun to bear all of this paperwork that would go with country of origin requirements and sourcing and North American content and so forth. You could bypass all of that, and some firms may actually choose to pay that premium in order to get a buy on all the paperwork.
Good to see you, sir. Thank you. We look forward to talking more about it in the future.